Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. This is the May 23rd meeting of the Dunn County Planning, Resource and Development Committee. Looks like everyone is here from the committee. Approval of the minutes from April 24. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Morales seconds. Any comments or discussion or questions? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Minutes are approved. Do we have any public comments, Mr. Carlson? Okay, anyone here want to? Okay. So our first item this morning is a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 16 Land Division, Condominium and Surveying Regulations. We'll start by having staff give us verify that the proper publication and then do a brief report. And then we'll see if there's any public testimony and if the committee has any questions, and we'll close the hearing. So I'll open the hearing with that, and I'll ask Mr. Carlson if you will provide us evidence of the publication and a report on the document.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. So in front of you, you have the notice of public hearing. I'll just read it real quick. To all whom it may concern, in accordance with section 236.45 sub 4 of the Wisconsin statutes, public notice is hereby given to all residents in Dunn County that the Dunn County Planning, Resource and Development Committee will hold a public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 16 Land Division, Condominium and Surveying Regulations Ordinance and the associated Land Division Fee Schedule on May 23rd, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. in room 54 at the Dunn County Government Center, 3001 US Highway 12 East, Menominee, Wisconsin. This is the only opportunity to address the county regarding the proposed ordinance amendments. All interested persons are invited to participate in said hearing and be heard. Persons unable to attend may submit written comments by sending an email beforehand to publiccomment@co.dunn.wi.us. Persons needing assistance in accessing the meeting, please call 715-231-6505. A copy of the proposed ordinance amendments is available for inspection at the Dunn County Surveyor's Office located at 3001 US Highway 12 East, Suite 240A, Menominee, Wisconsin, or on the Dunn County website. I have a copy of this is the ad proof that was certified by the paper, proof of publication. So it required a class 2 notice for the public hearing this morning. And down here, it was published in the paper on May 3rd and again on May 10th. So we met the publication notice. It was also posted on the county website and several other posting agencies around the county, the library, county clerk's office, judicial center, the normal places that we post hearing notices. So that's been done. I'll start out with just a very high level staff report this morning. So our current land division ordinance was adopted in January of 2022. During the past 16 months or so, while enforcing the ordinance, staff have experienced what provisions are working quite well, and then also what provisions need some modification. Staff have also identified additional provisions that would make the ordinance a much better and improved document. So that's why we're here this morning. So a real high level summary of the proposed amendments. We've been going over them, I would say, for the last 2 months now. Everybody's certainly aware of those, but our definition section, we've made revisions to terms such as environmentally sensitive areas, high water elevation, outlot, and wetlands. We've removed the contiguous buildable area requirement. We've added lands with high agricultural value, private road and structure. I need to make a note right here. In our definition section, I just caught it this morning. I'll pull it out here. Actually, I can bring it up on the screen. It's just some housekeeping that we need to take care of. Right here, line 111, lands with high agricultural value. We had initially put in there high value agricultural lands, which came after frontage, right? But then we changed it to lands with high agricultural value, but we didn't, it was an oversight. It should get put down under land division. So we will make that slight modification, just some housekeeping. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. Again, just noticed it this morning. Not sure how that happened, but we'll get it fixed. Section 16.21 is the certified survey map requirements. We've made some minor revisions and housekeeping there. Most notably, we have a note now, or a requirement for a note on the face of all CSMs whenever a newly created lot or outlot contains either mapped wetlands or wetland indicators and soils, just placing any prospective new buyers on notice that, hey, there's some conditions here that may affect the suitability of your property. And that note now will be right on the face of the map. Preliminary plats, section 16.32, we've added a requirement for a wetland delineation to be performed if the subject property contains wetland indicators and soils. We didn't have that before, and we think that's a good addition. Section 16.33 is final plats. We've added some additional requirements that were initially overlooked. Our street and road section, section 16.43, we've made numerous revisions to that, additions, deletions. We've shored up some of the language in there. So extensive revisions to that section. We've also had input from the towns, particularly on turnarounds, dead end cul-de-sacs, allowing for something other than a cul-de-sac. Section 16.46 is our lot and outlot section. This is another section we made extensive revisions to. Most notably, we removed the 30,000 square foot contiguous buildable area requirement for all newly created lots. And then lastly, the land division fee schedule. We've revised the variance fee to be a tiered fee, which will allow an applicant to submit multiple variance requests on the same application. Just some related information. On May 1st, I sent out an email so I sent out the public hearing notice and a copy of the amended ordinance to 23 land surveyors that I have on a distribution list, just asking for feedback, just so they're not caught off guard, so to speak, if and when this does get adopted. I've heard back from some of them, very small percentage, but it was all positive, just in passing over the phone. Nothing that rose to the level of a public comment for today, but generally speaking, the ones who did respond, look at our amendments favorably. On the same day, I also sent the public hearing notice and amended ordinance to every town clerk and chair in the county. So just trying to be transparent with what we're doing here. And I didn't receive much of any comment back, other than, we've had some chairs participating in our meetings in the past, which I think was certainly beneficial to the formulation of these amendments. And then yesterday I received correspondence from the Chippewa Valley Home Builders Association, their executive director. She and several of the builders that belong to the association have looked through the amendments, and they don't have reason for concern with anything that we're proposing. So I guess that concludes my staff report this morning. I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Does the committee have any questions or comments? We've had extensive discussion on this, I think. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to the point? You guys have all been real good about coming and helping out, so appreciate it. Okay. Well, seems like we've had this on the plate for a long time, and it's pretty well cooked. So why don't we close the hearing? It's okay with everybody. And then, if without objection, would it be okay to move to let's see, where is it on here? The 9A action on the revision. All right with the committee? No objections. Okay, so anyone care to make a motion? Tom?
So if I could just interrupt real quick here, I guess we'd be looking for a motion to approve the amendments and forward them on to the county board. It'll take two readings at county board.
Is there a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the amendments to chapter 16 and to move it along to the county board.
Thank you, Diane. Diane Morehouse moves. Supervisor Bjork seconds. Any further discussion?
Hmm.
Okay. All in favor of doing that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries and the action is forwarded to the executive committee. Thanks for all the work, Mr. Carlson. Much appreciated. Since, again, if it's okay, since Barbara's here and we have an item for her on the agenda, would it be okay if we move up to that? So number 8, A, can review and take action on bids for tax foreclosed property sale. That's all yours, Barbara.
Thank you very much, and thank you for accommodating me. So there was two bids made for 2 separate parcels in Downing. I believe that Mr. Carlson has the parcels right there. Thank you, Tom, for that. And so we did the bid process. There are 2 bids, one from Tom Mikla for $700, which doesn't qualify because we're still in the minimum bid phase of this. If the committee recalls, if there wasn't anybody that made the minimum bid during the time after publication, then we would open it up on the floor for any bid, but we're still in the first stage of this. And so there is a bid for $3,300, which the office submits to the committee would be the proper, or recommends that you adopt that and sell that property to Michael Stewart.
Which of those 2 lots is that?
It's the 2 center ones, but there's
Okay.
no, and that's part of why it's just land. So there's no structures there.
Right. Any questions? Okay, anybody else? Okay, I take a motion to approve the sale.
I will move to approve the sale to Michael Stewart for $3,300.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Barrier seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Say no. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're back up to staff reports. 6A. Review proposed ordinance amendments to address residential uses in commercial zoning districts. And I think Tammy, why don't you introduce yourself? It's, I think, your first time here, and then we'll ask you to share your thoughts with us.
Yes, I'm Tammy Traxler. I just joined the zoning team in March, and I previously came from St. Croix County where I worked for 20 years there, working planning, zoning, land conservation, kind of a hybrid of multiple positions. So I'm very thankful to be part of the Dunn County team, and going to try to tackle this topic today with you guys on residential uses and commercial. So
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Glad to have you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is the intent to have me just probably go through the entire presentation? It sounds like you guys have had quite a background on this topic.
Good question.
We can certainly just tackle through
Why
it.
don't you just go through it and point to us the items.
Some key items.
Committee can ask you questions as we go.
Perfect. So Anne started this presentation out covering the definitions, right? So we established what a principal building is, principal uses, the accessory, and those type of structures. So that it really plays a key role in this commercial district, thinking about what's that principal use, which is established, and then moving on to what would be that principal building versus accessory buildings or accessory uses. I won't really cover this too much, but we can revisit the definitions if we need to. But it sounds like the committee is very aware of the different type of structures and what the uses mean. So principal, the permitted principal structures. So if we look at, where this first comes up in the ordinance is in limited commercial. And I think a key point with limited commercial is it's area 3,000 square feet and less that's designated for commercial use, right? It also carries over into general commercial, which is for an area 3,000 square feet or greater, right? So there's kind of two different key differences. And so when we call it single family, multifamily dwelling, I think that maybe is where some of that confusion comes in, or that we can have conflicting uses going on. But ultimately, in 2017, it must have been recognized to have options to have residential housing in commercial districts. So there was a proposal to remove the non-owner occupied dwelling language. Staff is recommending to remove the non-owner occupied and just and basically strike single family dwelling out and just reference multifamily dwellings in the 4 dwelling units. If that makes sense.
You go back. Does that make sense to everybody? You repeat that last part. Tammy.
Yep, so what staff are recommending really is, let's take out single family dwelling and just focus on the multifamily dwelling, and our rationale will come up, even on that next slide. But
Okay.
or in some of the reasoning, but a key thing there is what does taxing look like, right? How is the property assessed? And so if we look at 4 units or more, those dwelling units, those are actually assessed as commercial. And so that's, staff's recommendation. Let's get rid of the single family concept and just focus on the 4+ dwelling units in our commercial districts. So again, kind of just some key points is that principal structure then becomes that commercial use, if that makes sense, because of how everything is taxed. So again, commercial and residential properties, there is a significant difference in building codes, the materials, obviously construction timeline, there's just it's more tense use on that landscape. So then if we go to permitted accessory uses, right, this is where there's kind of that balance, right? So this is where that 3,000 square feet, I think, is a key play, right? So if we're looking at limited commercial, that owner occupied versus non-owner occupied plays a factor, right? Because you're not going to have a multifamily in 3,000 square feet, right? So that really seems to fit your general commercial. But what do we do with these limited commercial? And so the ordinance actually addressed having the single family. I mean, I would almost focus on the single family as a accessory use, right? So you can have someone who has the barber shop and then 3,000 square foot residential dwelling or duplex even that is related to that commercial use of the property. But ultimately, staff are recommending allow the single and multifamily dwelling to remain as an accessory use, right? So we still establish that commercial use as that primary, and then the accessory would be related to that. Here it doesn't address, so this was formerly was referred to as owner occupied, and that language did get removed. It's kind of clunky, but I don't know if that makes sense.
Let's find out.
Up at my place, there's a woman or family that has a like beauty shop in the basement, and yet they live in the rest of the house. Would that be legal here then?
Correct.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
That's what I was trying to.
And I don't know if the history, but if you go back to your old hamlets, right? These little towns that have the and even kind of our downtown, but we think the little hamlets that have the the business in the bottom, right? It's kind of that classic barber shop, on the bottom, and then the residential use up above. And we can certainly visit the permitted accessory or permitted principal uses and kind of make those ties to how they fit together in some cases. And I think the key thing though is like the limited commercial has that size limit of 3,000 square feet. And versus general commercial has to be greater than 3,000 square feet, right? So I don't think you would see, I'd have a hard time seeing a single family dwelling, right, in a general commercial that's greater than 3,000 square feet in area, right? Because they have to be greater than that's, for that size. All right. All right, so I kind of going back to some of our rationale is, again, that allows the business owner to live on the same property, allows those mixed uses to exist. If you start restricting, residential property or the rental of property, there is some state statute that we could be in violation of. We don't want to, continue to help or build this housing shortage. We have land area that's available. How do we maximize that, right? So it really is trying to encourage, building up, right? So we're not just building laterally, we're building up and utilizing the properties that way. And by combining the residential commercial, we are actually supporting those businesses locally. Right, so that is, you could have someone who has the dry cleaners or the laundromat next to your barber shop, to a flower shop, some kind of those kind of close knit communities that we're seeing, a demand for. Next. And again, so this is just kind of an outline of what it would look like. Basically, we would strike the non-owner occupied language and then add owner occupied dwelling. Yep. I think that's. And then jumping ahead, the multifamily dwelling with 4 or more dwelling units. Again, so here's where we would get rid of the single family reference. This is kind of clunky how to kind of visualize it. And we can kind of maybe step back and look at this context later. I don't know if it's, but this is just an idea of what those changes could look like for the committee to consider. And I guess yeah. And so in summary, this is where, there was the proposal. It looks like this is, maybe committee proposal on the left, and then some recommendations for the staff on the right. So again, looking at just the first part of it being, we only allow for multifamily dwellings. And that would be essentially in the commercial or general commercial. You wouldn't get that in the limited commercial, right? And then the second one would be maintain the accessory use and allow that to be the single and multifamily dwellings. Very clear.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Can you explain more the rationale for why you are excluding units of 1 through 3 families?
So there really, it sounds like, the use of that commercial district, right? So we still want commercial to be commercial. And, so if there's a compatible, we at least know that units 4 and more are going to have to meet commercial standards, right? So that intensity kind of fits that commercial use of intensity. So then, so you still allow that property to be utilized for what it's intended to as the other commercial uses that we've identified.
Okay.
if that makes sense.
So the idea is that like a rented duplex doesn't have the right intensity.
Correct,
Is what you're
correct,
saying.
yep.
Whereas a larger multifamily home fits more with the idea of a commercial zone.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I want to just maybe throw one key factor out there is the thing that it doesn't account for, I don't know if you've had that discussion, but it's sanitary, right? So by the time we start thinking of 4 units out there, it's going to be tough to honestly get a sanitary system, a private septic system established for those 4 units. Okay. So that's a key factor, I think, to kind of keep in context of someone would have to meet a lot of criteria in order to even get to that 4-family unit.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
don't you think in practicality that if you're gonna build a single family home and you got the like finances, you're not gonna build in a commercial district? I mean, that's just, I think, common sense that you're gonna find a place that's residential, a little more quiet. 'Cause that's what you're building your home for. But so I think this kind of takes care of the problem itself. Personally, but
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you,
Sorry.
Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, Ann, or I can't remember where I heard it, said there might be a difficulty in removing a right. For example, in general commercial, if we removed one of the permitted uses, that there's a problem? Nick, or I don't explain that.
Yeah, you might be referring to now we created a non-conforming use, right? So now how do we treat those properties that do exist that were permitted under the current ordinance, right? So now if we remove it, those properties now become non-conforming. And I mean, they're still given rights. It's just a matter of how do they rebuild in the future? Let's say they did get burnt or that use got discontinued for 12 months. There's certain restrictions on what happens then to those properties once they become non-conforming.
Yeah, I understand the non-conforming, but I thought there was something different, Tom.
Down, you're talking about down zoning, right? The problem of
Down zoning.
taking away property rights by changing the zoning to be more restrictive.
Yeah,
And Ann raised, or I think Nick raised the question of whether, or somebody in the office raised the question of whether that was going to raise some legal obstacles for us. Did that come up in you? Does that come up in
It
you?
hasn't come up in or didn't come up in my discussion with Ann.
See what the point is? I mean, in a way. So we have all these properties out there that are zoned under the existing ordinance
Mhm.
that have certain rights for building multifamily units in commercial property, and now we're restricting that.
Mhm.
So theoretically, they've lost some property value.
and so what was
Yeah.
Nick's take on that? Did you say something about a 2/3 vote at the county board or what?
I can't remember now. You
Yeah, I
remember
do have a note here that says that we would need 2/3 approval from the county board in order to approve a
that?
down
Down
zone.
zoning, okay. So that's a question we got to deal with.
Okay.
Uh,
The next thing, Tammy, will you be handling this from now on?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. I'm really confused right now. It's like
Okay.
telephone. This whole thing was brought up because we made a mistake in 2017 and added multifamily without knowing it.
Okay,
And the whole purpose is to get rid of multifamily in general commercial, limited commercial. At least the whole purpose that I brought it up. So we were much closer last time. And I'm really confused right now because now we're talking about it. So I don't know what to say. We're back to where we started from as far as
Okay.
multifamily. I recognize, and I'm really happy you mentioned that it'd be tough to build 4, 6 multifamily type thing.
I mean, so the concern originally came up when your township was under the new, when a developer noticed that the commercial zoning allowed for multifamily housing by right. And they were prepared to bring a development proposal. So a town had identified commercial areas, not realizing that that was a right that was included in the zoning criteria, right? And so a developer brought a development proposal to them that it was, as I understand it, it was you know, 40 or 50, 80 acres of fourplexes, right, Mike?
Well,
Maybe I got it wrong.
I was at a town board meeting the other day and I ran into Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah,
And when he bought the property, he had no idea it was general commercial. The realtor told him it was general ag. And so he was planning, like he always does, just to ask for a rezone to R1. But then when he found out it was general commercial, then the town board had no say in the rezone because he could build anything he wanted. He could build duplexes, he could build anything. It ended up, it's worked out really nice. It's
Yeah.
a nice development. It went to R2. But in 2015, when the town's zoned, and in our county, the towns choose their zones based on what the county is. I don't know if that's
Yep,
everywhere,
yeah.
but we did that. And then in 2017, this came up amongst multiple pages of fine print, and no one knew about it, including the board members, the committee members. It just somehow got in there.
Mm.
And then we found out about it and I said, oh, okay, let's put it back to what the intent was when the town's zoned. And the town of Menominee, for example, has like 120 parcels out of the total in the entire county of like 160. And this is just looking on the map and counting, so they're just close. So that was the whole purpose of it, to go back to what the towns thought they had zoned it, because there's all of a sudden got changed without the towns knowing it. You see the town chairman here, I've been participating, and Tom and everybody else has done a great job of including them, but that didn't happen. And we didn't know about it. We don't know why it happened. Bob Colson, the former one, doesn't know why it happened. No one knows. So that's why I'm really confused right now, because my whole goal in bringing it up was to eliminate multifamily housing in limited and general commercial, but to keep, but I really like the allowing someone to have a business and live there or live next to it. As far as multiple use, that should be a separate zone, and we should add that to our zoning, because we don't have that right now. And in the town of Dunn, the county of Dunn, there aren't many places that would be applicable. Perhaps in the town of Menominee and Sullivan 25, a few things, but putting multifamily zoning in this without anybody knowing it is like buying insurance, and then 3 years later when you need it, they say, oh, we changed it. So that, I'm at a loss as to where to go here, Tammy, and I'm not, you know, you're coming into this without knowing any of this, but so I don't know where to go, Mr. Chair.
it's a little confusing, I gotta say. It looks like this format would not solve the problem you were trying to get at. It would, I mean, I can see how this, if it's possible, I mean, I would be going back to the way things were, this Supervisor Kinnear's goal. I think others of us would maybe be more interested in, is there some way to correct what happened so that it's more usable? And this may be a step in that direction, but I don't think it gets there. Anybody else have any?
Mr. Chairman.
Amy, you have any? Yeah, Diane, go ahead.
Well, and please, colleagues, recognize that I'm not necessarily on my intellectual game today, but I think, I mean, I understand Supervisor Kinnear's and the town of Menominee's issue, but I still just do not understand, given our housing situation in the county, how it is problematic to allow multifamily dwellings in general commercial. I can't see it. And it feels to me as if this has moved us a little closer to something that, at least to me, makes more sense in terms of our comp plan, in terms of our long-term vision, just in terms of where I think we need to be. And I apologize for not being able to be more articulate than that, but that's kind of where I am here.
I know, Monica, you brought up housing also. Talking about housing and satisfying the housing need in townships is kind of a red herring in a way. We had 2 houses built last year. I can see where we need more houses, but the housing is not going to be solved by putting multifamily in townships. It
Might be.
as Tammy just mentioned, and as we all learned in our CAFO study, wow, you got all the things that we don't want as far as water polluting. But anyway, people want to be near their work. They want to be everything else. And it's going to be like in Elk Mound where they're building like crazy. It's going to be a Menominee. That's the main focus. And the focus in the townships is single, and especially in Red Cedar, R2. Those are the functions. Town of Grant doesn't have any of that. They're agriculture. So different townships have different functions, and this will not solve or even attempt to solve that. We would be better off working on casitas, or what's that, mother-in-law houses, or other kinds of things that would allow us to a little flexibility. If we added a zone, added a zone for mixed uses, instead of trying to fit it in here after the towns went through all the work and used their land use plan and had multiple meetings with the residents. Even if you wanted it, it's not right. It's an after the fact thing that no one knows why we did it. So we'll disagree on that, but you don't understand this, and I don't get it either. So.
Any thoughts?
And well, just a couple of thoughts. So since 2017, in the case of the town of Menominee, have we had any multifamily units? 0. So downsizing is a moot point, right? I mean, nothing has been built or under that use. The property that you referred to, they ended up rezoning to an R2. And were they able to get multifamily on private septic?
They rezoned to R2
Okay,
and building single family homes.
so, okay. So we don't really have a good example of multifamily on private septic or sanitary. Okay. Was it ever discussed about having, if multifamily was was to remain as a compromise, would it be a conditional use? Was that conversation discussed?
Yes, we never had a full discussion of that, but that was raised as a possible alternative. Yeah.
Right, so then it could be evaluated as far as it, and until we get the rezoning or the new ordinance done, right? If we look at comp planning and come up with some major changes to the ordinance, that's that multi-use district that's gonna, or, almost like a condo plat that allows for multiple things to exist. Maybe a special exception for multifamily in commercial would be a compromise. Because then it could take into consideration, those conflicts potentially, and then address other concerns. I don't know if that's something that would be receptive to the towns or. And again, I'm speaking probably somewhat out of hand from. the
No,
CCB.
please, absolutely need and appreciate your opinions, and don't hesitate to share them. Any thoughts, Mike?
Well, in the direction we've been going, I'm starting to think that that may be a good compromise. I didn't like it in the beginning because the towns don't have a veto. They can just have a recommendation for special exceptions. It's interesting, like I mentioned, I talked to Mr. Rosendahl, the developer, he said, he was really surprised that they had multifamily dwellings or dwellings of any kind in general commercial. It surprised him and he said, it's crazy. He would never build anything in commercial that was, they don't coexist. So,
Yeah, I don't think that we found, I mean, maybe you know of some, but I don't think we, in the little bit of research that we did and staff and committee, I don't think we found examples of that being in other commercial districts. Um, It feels like this is a really good presentation and very thoughtfully laid out. I appreciate the staff doing it. I think as Supervisor Kinnear said, we're struggling with this, and as Supervisor Morales pointed out, for a number of reasons. But this, I don't think this as it is gonna solve the problem. Anyone have any, or we need more discussion of it anyway?
You have.
Do you guys have thoughts? Yeah.
Yes, I would if I.
You're more than welcome to. Can you come up?
Thank you. Bob Cook, Town Chairman, Red Cedar. I live at E 6477 490th Avenue. And I share the same concerns with Mr. Kinnear. This changed in 2017. The town of Red Cedar had opted into county zoning. And at that time, residential was not allowed in commercial properties. And I think this steps on the town's authority to govern itself, because you've changed the requirements, allowed residential in commercial. Why would we want multifamily in a commercial area when you're now going to put in septics and wells for several families on a small, probably parcel area of land, when the county did not like our development of 1 house, 1 acre because of struggling with septic and water separation from the house above on the hill. Why would we want to add more of them in a tighter space in residential, in commercial area? I think it's wrong. We didn't know about it. Mike brought it up to us by attending these meetings, and we realize now that we have a problem with this. And I can see this happening on a commercial property on 708th, just outside of Cedar Falls. The plan was to put up greenhouses and grow tomatoes and other vegetables. And the person that was doing that had already had trouble finding workers to work his produce. So the next logical step would be, because it's commercial, to put in multifamily housing, for low income jobs. That just goes right around what the towns have worked for with the city on this extraterritorial zoning, or where we want residential, where we want commercial, where we want industrial. I have a problem with it, and I don't see this being the answer yet. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bob.
Tony Gersaverson, Chairman, Town of Elk Mound, E 9920 630th Avenue. So Town of Elk Mound is not zoned, it's not part of zoning or county zoning, as we're not zoned on our own.
Of course, we're looking at land use and all that sort of stuff, so I'm listening in on this. A couple things that come to my mind on commercial districts is I think of Dean and Sue's Tavern on the west side of town, which I'm gonna assume that that's gonna be light commercial or something like that. And you have it's an older, like a hamlet they talked about with a, I assume there's an apartment up above. That's the first thing that goes in my mind. Bob Cook had a picture of mixed use in a city situation, but that's separate from the county. And the building I'm thinking of is downtown where Bremer Bank moved into. They were in the lower level, and you had a mixed use. But that's a whole different deal than the when Bob was talking about where the greenhouses and having employee housing next to it. A fourplex in the town of Elk Mound, former county board member Steve Jensen had built one, and I think it's about 20 years ago or something like that. That's on private sewer. Okay. And I'm also thinking of the mobile home court west of the village of Elk Mound, right off of Old Highway 12. I think that is going to be a single septic system. And I also think that there's one on Highway 29 going into Chippewa town of Wheaton, trailer court there. Now, both of those trailer courts are on extremely well drained soils, i.e. blow sand. Okay. So that was some of the thoughts that I had when I was looking at that deal. And I think of Bob's deal of the greenhouses, that I think, if you have a commercial property and you buy commercial property and you expect there's certain things you're going to go on and there's going to be some noise and sort of that stuff, that you're not going to have residential complaints. And if the guy next to you puts in a bunch of housing, that could be an issue. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Okay.
So a question that I'm kind of not confused, but would it be okay to have residential and limited commercial if it was hooked up to city water and sewer? Would that be acceptable or totally not? Because even like the town of Menominee in the city, they have some septic areas that are not part of the city, right?
Yeah.
So would that be reasonable or not? Because limited commercial would be a very small commercial footprint.
I don't know whether I can say whether it's, you're asking me, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that I can say whether it's acceptable or not, but since there's no minimum lot size in limited commercial or general commercial, hooking something up to city sewer water would at least eliminate the pollution problem. I don't think it eliminates the mixture of housing and commercial problems that exist. Usually, Tammy, I think you try to have buffers in between different things. So I'd have to think about that for a little bit. But when this development first occurred, I went and talked to the Randy ID from the city and said, how far are you away and how much would it cost? Just to get an idea. So it's always preferable to have it hooked to the city if you got a development, because it's going to pollute. We learned that. Good question.
I have a question. Was it ever analyzed on what land area is zoned commercial currently and the lot size? I think, the chairman for town of Red Cedar brought up a good point, is the lot sizes, right? So if we're looking at a lot of small commercial lots, even to get a multifamily on them would be very difficult. So I'm wondering, even just, do we have a good assessment of what we have zoned for general commercial, limited commercial now in the county?
Probably not.
If you were to travel out on Highway 12 from Fleet Farm,
Yep.
pretty much both sides are general commercial, especially the south side. Mostly because there were already some there, and most of those are larger than an acre. There's very few small ones. if that was your question.
Yep, no, that's good. I mean, and that's, so that's, you know, that's the kind of the planning side. I mean, really wants to analyze what we have to see. And where do we want our growth to happen? I think it's some really great points, right? We want our communities connected, right? So as soon as we start putting multifamily out in a rural landscape, one, we've changed that rural character, right? One thing that's very attractive, I think, about Dunn County is that rural character. And I think there's a strong intent to maintain that rural character. So what we have designated for general commercial even, does that make sense? And I think that, some of these lot sizes are one ways that we limit, what can even happen there. But it could get scary if you have 40 acres zoned general commercial. The sky's the limit at what could happen there based on what we have.
That's exactly the problem. That's exactly the problem. Yeah, and that's what we have in many places.
Yeah.
So, we definitely need more discussion and some new solutions. What are your thoughts, Tammy? Can you take this back to, you and Ann have some discussions about it? And
Yeah, absolutely. I think this helped put a context of what's, the topic, and we can have further discussion with,
Okay.
staff and,
we have to figure this out and we have to solve it,
Yep.
and we can do that. Okay, so
it was a good conversation.
learn as we go here.
Yes, thank you.
Any comments, Mike?
Yeah, she did a really nice job. You
Did a
stepped
very
into
nice
this
job.
and we've been talking about it and
Very nice
we-
job.
we don't agree on everything, the five of
That's
us.
exactly what we want. It's good
And
discussion
Nice job.
from everybody here.
Yeah, I'm piling on. Good job, Tammy. Thank you very, very much.
I like that kind of piling on.
Okay. All right. Let's see. 6B, review of groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations. Mr. Cummings?
Morning, everyone. It's been a couple months, I think, since we've had a little bit of update on our groundwater ad hoc committee recommendations. So in the packet, there is the traditional report. Tried to highlight a few things that have changed or progress has been made since the last time we had spoke about this. Just to call out a few things, obviously the conversation with the public hearing today regarding the land division ordinance has an impact. The groundwater ad hoc committee had strong thoughts on that. So hopefully through the latest amendments, we're continuing to hold up the intent of that. And I think a review as things come up of the suitability standards within that ordinance and the purpose of that ordinance is worthy of a conversation on any given topic that might be before us on that matter. If you want to scroll down, Tom, to the next page. And I'll let Chairman Quinn chime in on any of this as well. So we mentioned at the past about a new it's known as a Red Cedar Learning Hub. It's I guess it's an effort to connect rural communities through maintaining that rural character, but also connecting a community to support itself. And a learning hub is an example that's being used in the Midwest, upper Midwest right now. And we've had an opportunity to participate in the next steps in setting up a learning hub here for the Red Cedar watershed, and how the work within the watershed or the greater community can support itself. And as you can tell, this is primarily under the heading of establish a countywide initiatives to support agricultural diversity as an economic development and water quality strategy. So I think that's part of the conversation that's being had with the learning hub at this point. It's still in its infancy, trying to scope out its vision and then identify stakeholders. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
That's
Chairman
fine.
Quinn. Okay.
Who else is involved? Who have you been talking to? Just curious.
Well, so this is it's part of something called Grasslands 2.0, which is a project, a joint project between the University of Minnesota and the University of Wisconsin that is under the direction of Professor Randy Jackson, and kind of a multidisciplinary team at the university. And they have been I suppose the project's been funded now for probably 3 years, maybe. And the goal is to sort of help communities envision a rural landscape that is, you know, more diverse, more engaged, more people, more towns, more schools, agriculture that is more prosperous, that is environmentally sensitive, but also taking advantage of the markets and the technology that's there. So the main tool they're doing, when they set up originally, they picked, I think, 5 areas in Minnesota, 3 in Wisconsin, and 1 in Illinois. And in each of those areas, they started by setting up what they call learning hubs, which are basically bringing together a diverse group of citizens from the region to begin talking about what do we want our community to look like, and what specific activities can we cooperate on together. Primarily, I think from in the locus of agriculture production and farming, but also in regard to the larger community, schools, housing, jobs, and how those things get tied together. And so the learning hubs have brought groups of concerned people together from different perspectives, and they've discussed values, they've discussed options and problems, and the goal is for them to come up with some strategies that they can then work together to implement. And the university will provide some of the technical resources to help make that happen. And hopefully there'll be some joint fundraising and some program collaboration. So for example, and so we asked them, some of us who have been working on the Red Cedar Watershed Conference in particular, asked them if they would, and interested in this diversity of agriculture thing, asked the university if they would consider establishing a hub in our region so that we could be part of that discussion process. And they have agreed to take the initial steps in doing that. And so now we're sort of tied into the loop. Right now, there's a initial steering committee of probably 10 or 12 people that were sort of faces on it. I'm on it. Some people from Barron County, some folks from some farmers, some business people. And the idea is to expand that group over the next year until we get a broader cross section and can really begin having some thoughtful discussions. And one of the discussions that we want to have, that group wants to have in larger, is about comprehensive planning and about what do we want the landscape to look like. And we all live here now. It's certainly changed in the last 30 years. What kind of changes do we want to see? Do we don't want to see? And are there things we can do? And this is sort of collective thought, not just, this is what I think. And so it's a process of, I consider it like a process of practicing democracy, which is kind of what we do in our meetings, where we figure out how to make things work and do it with input from lots of places. So this is, I think, trying to get at a place where those kind of discussions aren't really happening, and see if we can make them happen. And I think that applies, as Chase said, it fits with one of the priorities of the Water Quality Group, which was to create this agricultural diversity and to connect that agricultural diversity with economic development in the community. So that's.
Thank you. It's much more extensive than just a steering committee meeting.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, we had the first formal steering committee. I gotta say too, that UW Stout has sort of stepped up to the plate, and Tina and they've got some grant funds to do something within what they call their rural community development initiative to help support some of this work. So it's kind of a collaborative effort at this point, but just as Chase said, just in the very beginning stages.
Well said. Thank you, Tom. A couple other things just to highlight here. We've been trying to increase one of the goals was to achieve 100% of nutrient management plan coverage across the entire county. I think we've spoken with all of you in the past at the challenges associated with that. And this is one example. If you look back in 2021, we were at 24% coverage. We're now in 2023. As of April 1st, we were at 24% of coverage. So we are taking steps to, I would say, additional steps than maybe we have done in the past to follow up with individuals that should be turning in a nutrient management plan, whether that was through a permit they received, cost share they may have received, or some other program that they might be in. So there is some challenges with maintaining that willingness to participate in that type of a program. Again, the Red Cedar Learning Hub is mentioned as part of the grazing, farmer-led rotational grazing initiative, which is a component of what that learning hub might tackle. And let's see, all of you are aware, I mentioned it in a staff report previously, but some of that outreach, water quality type work discussion through the heat and the community conversation presentation I gave at for Earth Day. And then we've had some further conversations with the ag community through our farmer-led watershed groups regarding groundwater quality as part of some of their meetings. And then I think the last thing on here would be just a quick update on the private well monitoring program. So that while that's been a long process already to get where we are today, but the official collection of all the private wells started yesterday. So we're at
Great.
1,015 to collect. As Heather has been calling everyone to schedule them as part of this batching. So every week, we're running into what we would expect. There's homes that have sold, there's people that don't answer. So there may be some fluctuation in the end result here as far as the number of wells collected, but it's going to be pretty close to that 1,000 as we anticipated. If we do have remainders, we're going to evaluate the process that will take to reach that goal, whether that's doing some resampling of some wells if we have some issues. But the next probably 3 to 4 weeks are going to be pretty intense for a few staff. All staff in our division will be collecting samples at some point to try to distribute that workload. So we will be out and about on the road knocking on doors. So so far so good. I don't know if you have any other questions regarding this report, but we'll try to keep our foot in the gas a little bit on it. So
Any questions? Okay, thanks, Chase. Let's see, where are we at? 9B, right?
Retainer Lake.
Oh, yes, 7A, sorry.
Yeah.
So, as was noted in the agenda, the Zach Raff, who was appointed by the county, has taken a job as an economist with USDA. So he's no longer at Stout and no longer, as part of that job, able to participate in local government activities. So he's resigned from the Lake District Board. And the question was, should the county fill that vacant position? I think the internal discussion was, let's consider that. The problem is it has to go back because it was approved by the full county board. It has to go back to the full county board, which wouldn't be until the June meeting. The district is planning their annual meeting in early August. So it's sort of more confusion rather than help. So the board has suggested that we not take action on this, that we not fill that position. But I see that the chair of the district is here. Al, you want to give us an update? Yeah. Could you come up and do that? Yeah.
Good morning. it's been a while since I've been here and not in this room. We've had our meetings in this room. And I would like to thank the county for allowing us to have our meetings here. When we started this whole group, we kind of felt like we were the redheaded stepchildren of everything. And we started out with no money and no place to meet and things like that. And the county's been most generous. And we've made progress. I'd like to just take a minute to maybe tell you where we're at to give you some context as to what's happened with the Tainer Lake Rehabilitation District. As you know, we were approved and we started out with statute that said we have to have all kinds of things done, and we didn't have any money to do that, and varying political opinions as to what we should be doing. We've had monthly meetings since February, and these meetings have gone very well. I do want you to know that we do take public comment at every meeting. We do allow people to speak, and there've been good discussions. As you've said before, it is the democratic process, and we don't always agree, but people do have a chance to speak. The two things that we were charged to do was to carry on the work of the Lake District. Well, with no money, there's no work. So really, we've have our board, we have our roles in the board, and we've been planning the annual meeting, which is August 5th at 1 o'clock, and it'll be at the high school. And so residents and property owners have a chance to vote on the budget. And basically the purpose of this first annual meeting is going to be 99% the budget, which there again, because we're so new, it is probably not going to be a very extensive budget. We have, and the reason why I talk about the budget is as you had discussed, with the budget and the annual meeting and having to have postings and we have to send notification to every single resident. And we're going to have that budget and those proposals done by July 5th. So that context with the fact that you don't have a meeting to approve until June, and we're going to be, most of the work is going to be done August or July 5th. I think that gives you some context to make your decision. You certainly can do whatever you want to do. The other thing is that when I talked to Eric Olson at and Stevens Point, who kind of guides these processes, he told me also that this was a unique situation, that they had not had an appointed person leave the post before the annual meeting. So there's all kinds of statute as to how to appoint, but there's nothing in statute that says what to do for the interim board. And so basically we can do whatever we want. But there's really three choices. And one would be for the county to appoint, two would be to leave it unfilled, and the third position would be the president of the Lake Tainer Lake District Board could appoint and approve by the rest of the board. I don't really like the third option because it's pretty quick, and if you open it up, and it would take 2 meetings for us just to appoint that position realistically, if you wanted to solicit people to do that. So, but on the positive side, that's the challenges of us running. On the positive side, we're up and running. We have a website. We have the not only do we have a website, but we've had donations. We've garnered over $3,000 in personal donations from people. Jim Zons, our county representative, has donated the website and the work on the website with our public notifications, which is up and running. And the others of us have also donated time, other monetary things to the operation of the district. So it's up and running. It's alive and well. And so we're moving forward. The biggest thing right now is that from my aspect as the chairperson of that committee, our biggest challenge next is going to be number one, finding out where we fit in. We've met with Chase and the some of the other groups with within the Red Cedar Basin. I'm meeting with the DNR, fish biologists, the regular biologists, to start looking at some planning grant opportunities. So when you think of it, I know at the county meeting, everybody was talking about just taxation, and that was the only thing on their mind. It's far more comprehensive than just taxation. And we're hoping we get invited to anything that deals with water quality in the basin, and that we can have a positive impact on that. And one of the biggest thing is I think that we need to stress a lot is through educating the public as to basically what we are, what we're not, more so than what we really are, and how we can fit in and how we can contribute to that effort. Do you have any questions for me?
I guess the only question, thanks for coming, by the way. And
No problem.
Thanks for your work. So I think we're going to recommend not taking any action on replacing. Is that satisfactory for you?
I'm more than happy.
Okay.
That it makes it a little easier. It makes it easier on one end. It
Yeah.
makes it a little clunkier on the other end, but we're used to those challenges.
Sure. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question relevant to that point? Al, since you need to prepare a budget, do you feel, Al, that you have sufficient input to get that done without us appointing another member?
More hands always make lighter work,
Right.
but I'm afraid that if there was a rush job to appoint, and I don't mean that because, let me put it this way, because of the time frame and being so close, I don't know that there would be a large advantage.
Yeah.
If there would be somebody that could be there for 3 months, I think it would be advantageous. Besides that, those meetings are open and we're listening to the people. So if somebody wanted to have input, all they have to do is give it. No, they don't get a vote, but they would certainly have input, and that's what we've tried to do.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, Al, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. I'm really happy to hear this report. It sounds like things are going in a really, really positive direction. It sounds like things are really democratic. I love to hear that you have public comments. I think that we put together a really nice initial board with a lot of different perspectives, and I'm pleased to hear how things are turning out.
Right. And just so that you know, in my background, that I've worked with boards and things like that, and it is a standard practice not to necessarily appoint if there's a short time. And it works fine. And like I said, it's a little clunky in that you have even numbers, but I think that offsets the problems of changing the dynamic at this point. And to be real honest with you, we haven't tackled the budget yet, so there may be more different opinions. But
see.
that's how budgets go, and so we'll handle it.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Thank
and
you.
Sharing your thoughts. So with that, I don't think we need to take any action and just not take action. Is that all right with everybody? Yep. I think that's the end of the agenda. No? What did I miss? I always miss
Housing study.
housing stuff. Oh, yeah, gosh. There it is with no check mark next to it.
That's okay. I just hear you the whole time.
Oh, I should have, Chris, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Would you like me to speak to this? All right, so you had in your packet a letter from Anne and I recommending creation of a housing work group a bit back, probably a little bit more than a month ago. Some of the original county board and staff came together who had proposed the county joining in doing a housing study and talked about at the completion of that housing study, there's a significant number of recommendations of things, actionable things that we could do after the study is completed. And so the thought of that group was that if we were not going to just let the study sit on a shelf and it actually needed to be worked on, then it probably made sense to try to figure out how to have that happen and have some oversight of that. So one of the options in the rules of the board is for a committee to appoint an advisory committee or a work group. It can consist of county staff or other individuals or organizations, and its purpose can be conducting research, analysis, providing information to the committee, and it can include members of the committee, but it can't have a quorum of the committee. And committee members are not eligible for per diem. So our recommendation is that, and we had a discussion about whether this should land in community resources and tourism or in PR&D or where this committee should land, and decided that it fit with all of the other conversations around planning and zoning. And probably best, although it probably could have landed in a number of spots. And so our recommendation is that this committee appoint a work group for the purposes of analyzing the recommendations of the housing study and making some recommendations about what might be actionable, and then overseeing moving forward of those and those action items. And that group would then report to this committee on their progress and for any decisions that needed to be made.
Any questions? Supervisor Morehouse, do you have any?
Well, I was just wondering, Mr. Chairman, thank you for asking. First of all, I think lodging this in a standing committee makes perfect sense, since we need to move forward with it and not simply pat ourselves on the back for having done a study and then forget that we did it. So that's number one. Number two, I think PR&D is the perfect committee to take this on, since we are probably the only committee that's really focused on long range planning and so on. So those 2 points. The third point is a question: do you need a motion to approve the creation of this? What does it say here? A work group. Do we need a motion?
So Chris, is this require county board approval?
I should have looked that up. I'm trying to remember because we just did another one for our broadband,
Yeah.
and I can't remember if we brought
I
it
don't
back
think
to
it
the
came
board
to
or
the
not.
board.
I don't think it came in front of
don't
the
think
board
so.
either. I
I
think
don't think so.
this committee has the authority to create its own work group that reports to it.
So would it be appropriate to authorize the establishment of the group and then put it on future agenda for discussion of how to constitute it?
Yes, what I thought that is if the group, if this committee moved to create a work group, then I would come to the next committee with recommended members of that group.
Okay. Any discussion? Anyone care to make a motion?
I would happily move, Mr. Chairman, that the PR&D committee establish a housing study implementation work group with appropriate provisions for reporting back to the standing committee.
Is there a second? Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Any discussion?
Would there be any kind of a, excuse me, time frame on how long this committee would be enlisted?
I think that that would be part of what we would need to sort out. Again, those recommendations out of that housing study are pretty extensive. And I think we were having a hard time, absent someone's concerted effort of sort of drilling into them and figuring out what were actually actionable. So I think one of the first tasks of this committee would be to look at those and say which of these are even possible or advisable, and then moving forward. And I think at that point in time, we would have a better idea about the length of the committee, because it's possible that some of those things might then fall into different, different arenas. If they largely were all, say, for instance, I don't think that they are, but if they were all zoning related issues,
Yeah.
then they would land with more in zoning than with a work group. So I think until we drill into knowing or analyze, knowing kind of where to start, I don't know.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thanks, Chris. And
So, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
who would we contact that we think might be a good member to be on that?
well, why don't we let Chris come back with a report next month and get an idea what she thinks the committee should look like, and then we can have that discussion.
Okay.
And that's gonna be important because it's getting the right people on it
Mhm.
is the key. Okay. I think that's it. Miss anything? I got checked off everything. Announcements? Future meeting, June 13th.
Tuesday, right?
That is on a Tuesday, yeah. All right, then we're adjourned.